This video will show you how to improve the performance of your website by adding expires headers to your .htaccess file. So what the heck is expires headers? Well, when set up properly, expires headers tells your visitor's browser whether an item like an image or a CSS file can be stored in the visitor's browser for future access, or if the browser has to get that item directly from the server or the source. Now, just to clarify, when I say it's stored in the visitor's browser, the browser actually downloads those items to the visitor's computer, also referred to as locally. Now, for example, whenever you set an expires header for one of these items like the JPG or a PNG image file, then when the visitor returns to the site or visits a different page on that site, those image file types, along with all the other items that we have set the expires headers for, will load much faster because they are already stored in the visitor's browser, and the browser does not have to go all the way back to the server to get those items because they're pulled up from the visitor's own computer. Now, for this to work, you need to be on an Apache server, which most are these days. Also, if after adding your expires headers code snippet, the tests are not showing the expires headers feature being active, then contact your host and ask if they have the expires headers module activated. And while you got them on the line, ask them which code snippet do they suggest you use, because there's quite a few different code snippets. And I'm going to include a lot of them in a copy and paste format along with this video. Also, it's worth mentioning that sometimes a membership or an e-commerce plugin might not play nice with certain settings within the browser caching or expires headers settings. And if this happens, then just contact the plugin's creator and ask them how to get their plugin to work alongside with the browser caching. Now, first off, I want to go ahead and run a test to see where we are in regards to the browser caching, also known as expires headers. Now, this is the site we're going to be doing the testing on, so we just come on up here and refresh just to show that it is working. Now, we're going to be doing the test on GTmetrix, and we can get there by going to gtmetrix.com, and we just enter the URL here and then click on Analyze. Now, this particular site is going to be doing a test for two different tools, that being Google's PageSpeed Insights and Yahoo's YSlow. You can see they're doing it over here, and these are the two different scores. Now, these two services test for different items, and that's why you've got varying scores for the exact same site. So we scroll down here and see for PageSpeed Insights, leverage browser caching, I've got a mediocre score of 74. That's a C. And if we click on this, it gets a little drop down and it tells us a little bit more about it. And if we hover over the What's This Mean button, you get this pop up here and you can click on the Read More to tell you more about PageSpeed Insights view of leverage browser caching. They give you some suggestions and some code snippets to be using. But right here's what I want to point out. For these items that are on my site, these other ones are external links, so I don't have any control over those. But the items that are actually on my site tell you that the expiration is not specified. That's what we're going to be fixing. Now, if we go to YSlow, you can see here we got a big fat goose egg, 0, hit total F. Click on the link here, and again, this is for expires headers. I guess that's YSlow's version of browser caching, tomato kind of thing. But you can see here that there's a whole lot of different items in here that are external links that I have no control over, but there are a few of them in here that are on my website, that are on my URL, that I may have some control over. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to hover over the What's This button, come on down here and click on Read More. And this tells you a little bit more about YSlow and how they interpret expires headers. So what I want to do, I suggest reading this stuff over for additional information, but what I'm going to do is scroll on down here to the bottom and just copy this code into my clipboard. And they tell you all about how to set things up here. But I'm going to log into my cPanel control panel, go to File Manager, and open up my .htaccess file, right click, left click on Code Edit, and then at the very top of the page, it's where I'm going to paste that code. And you can see here the different file types and the time over here on the right. Now this time is not set in stone. This is just what YSlow suggests. And like I said, there's a whole bunch of additional code snippets you might want to use, and I'm going to include those along with this video for you to kind of check out. But you can always adjust these times, but you don't want to go more than 1 year. That's kind of the maximum you want to mess with. Let's go ahead and save this and come on back to Gmetrix, and let's run that test again. And we're done. And under page speed, It upped our score from a 74C to a B, 87. But whenever you go to YSlow, it's still giving us a goose egg. For some reason, I've noticed that YSlow does not recognize expires headers as far as that code being entered. And it was even the code that I pulled off of their page. But if we open this up and if we look at the items in here, none of those items that used to be on our URL are being shown anymore. All these items are from external links now. So that's just some kind of a glitch in amongst the YSlow testing for some reason. So it is working, obviously. So if you just stick with the code that we went with from YSlow, but if you just use this code here, it will greatly improve the speed in which your site loads in your visitor's browser. And that's going to bring us to the end of this video on how to add expires headers to leverage browser caching. Thanks for watching, and you have a great day. This video is going to walk you through the basic setup of the W3 Total Cache plugin. Now I say basic setup because there is a bunch of various settings that you can tweak in order to get an even faster and more efficient loading WordPress site. But even with just the basics we're going to be covering, there's a huge boost of speed for your site's load time. Now the magic of what this plugin does is caching. That's probably why it's part of the name. The process of caching is basically when certain bits of your WordPress site does not change very often, like say your header image or your CSS files. Well, these bits are stored for quicker retrieval. Stored? Stored where, you might be wondering? Well, there are two types of caching going on here. Browser caching, which is local, and page caching, which is server-side. Now, the browser caching is when the browser of the site visitor stores or downloads some of these bits to the site visitor's computer. These bits are also called temporary internet files. So when the site visitor returns to the site, those stored bits are more quickly pulled from the site visitor's computer than if they had to be pulled all the way from the web server the site is on. So the benefit of the browser caching is only seen after the first visit to the site. The other type of caching is page caching, and it is better understood if you know that when a visitor goes to your website, there's a whole lot of moving parts. For example, WordPress has to talk to all the PHP scripts, and they have to then talk to the MySQL database, and then all of the requested pages files are put in order and shot out to the visitor's browser. So what page caching does is kind of takes a snapshot of the completed page and stores it on the website's server, so when someone wants to see that page, instead of burning through all of those server resources and the time that it takes to talk back and forth, the server simply delivers that snapshot to the visitor's browser. Boom! Way quicker delivery of the page and saving a ton of server resources in the process. So browser caching is storing the bits and pieces of the site on the visitor's computer, and page caching is storing a snapshot of sorts on the website server. So let's do a quick test to see where we are before we install and configure W3 Total Cache on our site. Now this is the site we're going to be tweaking here, and I'm just going to copy the URL. Let's go ahead and refresh it just to make sure that it is working. Okay, good deal. And let's come on over to gtmetrics.com to do our test. Click on Analyze. And you can see here that we've got the scores for two different services, one from Google's PageSpeed Insights and one from Yahoo's YSlow. And they test for different items, and that's why the scores are so different. But you can scroll down a bit and get some more information on each individual item that PageSpeed tests for and that YSlow tests for. But right here are the main details that we're looking for right now, and that's the page load time, total page size, and the number of requests. And we're going to go ahead and install, activate, and configure W3 Total Cache. Then we'll come back in here and run a comparison test, so we'll see these numbers side by side, and hopefully they will be much improved on the after than they were on the before. So with that said, let's go ahead and come on over to our dashboard area. Now before we actually jump into this any further, I do want to mention that you should go ahead and do a full backup of both files and database. Now W3 Total Cache is a powerful plugin that can massively speed up your site if your web server is properly set up. So if your website, say for example, is hosted on a free shared hosting service, yeah, they do exist, then you are likely to run into some problems using W3 Total Cache. That said, it's a great idea to have a kind of a backup plan in place in case one or more of the items that we're going to be configuring on W3 Total Cache messes up your site. But of course, you're going to have the full backup of your files and database, so you can just put everything back as it was before W3 Total Cache. But before reinstalling your backup, I will suggest that you first contact your hosting service if something goes wrong and let them know what you're doing and what has happened, and get them to help you fix the problem. Because whether they cannot or will not help you out, you will at the very least have that backup that you can use to reinstall everything as it was prior to W3 Total Cache. Okay, with our multi-layered safety net in place, let's go ahead and install, activate, and configure W3 Total Cache. Come on over to Plugins, click on Add New, and the installation and activation part is the same as it is with any other plugin. Up here in the search plugins, type in W3 Total Cache, hit enter, and then the one that says W3 Total Cache, go ahead and click on Install Now and activate. Now you've got this that shows up top, but we don't want to worry about the edge mode at all, so we can go ahead and just click on hide this message. But you can see here on the left that we do have a new link called Performance, and whenever you hover over it, you get this pop out. Now, there's only a few of these items we're going to be messing with in this video, and that is General Settings, where we're going to be able to turn on Page Cache and Browser Cache, because everything else we're going to leave alone. If you want to learn more about Minify or Database Cache or CDN, be sure to check out the FAQ, and that's going to give you a ton of information. So let's head on over to General Settings, and by all means, do not mess with toggle all caching types on or off. Just leave that alone. Now under preview mode, you can enable this if you, say for example, have a well-seasoned site that's got a lot of posts and you want to be able to preview your settings before actually seeing how it affects a live site. Then go ahead and click on Enable, and then you'll have this show up where you can preview any changes that take place without actually deploying it. And then when you're ready to deploy, then you want to disable and deploy. Pretty simple stuff. I'm going to go ahead and click on Disable now and get back to where we were. Now then, the only thing we're going to be messing with on this page is Page Cache. We want to check that to enable. We want to leave this as Disk Enhanced. You get the drop down there, you can see the other options, but we want Disk Enhanced. And we're going to skip everything else except for Browser Cache. We want to make sure that that's checked to enable that. Everything else we're going to leave alone. And then just click on any of these Save All Settings buttons and we're good. Now that's under General Settings. Now then, we're going to take care of some individual items in the Page Cache and the Browser Cache sections, starting with Page Cache. Click on that. And rather than having this to be an hour-long video while I go through and explain each and every one of these items, instead I'm just going to tell you what to check. Cache front page, check. Cache feeds, check. If you have an SSL certificate attached to your domain, check that. I don't, so I'm not going to worry about it. The other ones leave alone. Don't cache pages for logged in users, check that. And check this one for don't cache pages for these user roles, as well as all the roles you do not want to serve up the old cache content to. They will instead get the fresh new content. And this holds true for any membership roles that might be out to the side here if yours is a membership site. So check all of those, click on Save All Settings, and that's under the General section. If we scroll down, the next one, Cache Preload, go ahead and check that, leave the default numbers there, and if you have a sitemap URL, which you should have a sitemap, go ahead and enter that in here, Save All Settings, and if we come on down to Purge Policy, the default settings are just fine. Advanced, you want to make sure that compatibility mode is checked. Everything else you can just leave alone. Click on Save All Settings, and that's it for Page Cache. Now then, Browser Cache, under General Settings, I'm going to untick Set Last Modified Header, and instead I'm going to tick Set Entity Tag or E tag, and I'm going to select Set Expires Headers instead of Cache Control Header. And you do not want to check the box next to Set W3 Total Cache Header, and you want to leave the Enable HTTP or the gzip compression checked. Check the box next to Don't Set Cookies for Static Files, and then click on Save All Settings. And that's the settings for the General section. And as we made these adjustments here under the General section, they also affected these boxes under the subsections for CSS and JavaScript HTML and XML, media, and other files. And all of these default settings are just fine, but they are there just in case you find the need to come in and uncheck the expires headers for the CSS and JavaScript, or just the time for the expires header lifetime from 1 year down to something else, but 1 year would be a maximum. You have that ability to make these granular adjustments. And any adjustments you do make, be sure to click on Save All Settings. And that's it. We enabled page cache and browser cache in the general settings. We selected Disk Enhanced under Page Cache, and we adjusted a few items under Page Cache and Browser Cache. And that was it. Any questions that you have about any of this stuff, or you want to learn more about these other items we did not mess with, be sure to check out the FAQ. Now it's time to retest. Let's head on back over to GT Metrics, click on Compare. And here we can see the changes that took effect as a result of our tweaking of just the page cache and the browser cache. Total page size was reduced, page load time was reduced, and both scores were increased. And you can scroll down to see the improvements on the individual items for both page speed and Y-slow. And that's going to bring us to the end of this video on installing and activating W3 Total Cache to increase the speed of your load time of your website. Thanks for watching, and you have a great day. The W3 Total Cache plugin is a powerful tool to help boost the load time speed of your WordPress site. But if you decide to uninstall the plugin, you might find it a bit tricky to get it completely removed. Well, this video will walk you through the steps of totally uninstalling the W3 Total Cache plugin. Now, we will be editing some files within your WordPress installation directory, so we're going to need access to either your cPanel control panel, which is what I'm going to be using, or you can do it through an FTP client, but there's a little bit more work involved there because you got to download the files, edit the files, re-upload the files, overwrite the existing files on your server, and so using the file manager within your cPanel control panel is a lot easier. Let's go ahead and come on into our dashboard area and go to our installed plugins. And you can see here that we've got the W3 Total Cache installed and activated. So if we go ahead and deactivate it, go through the normal process of deactivating and deleting an installed plugin just like anything else. Now then, if we go into our cPanel control panel and come on down to File Manager, in older versions of W3 Total Cache, you'd have to go in and clean out your .htaccess file and delete some code within your wp-config.php file. Well, in the current version of W3 Total Cache, that's all been taken care of for you upon deactivating and deleting that plugin from your plugin dashboard. But if we come into the WP-content directory, there are a couple of items that are hanging around here left over from the deletion of that W3 Total Cache plugin. That would be this directory and the cache directory. So let's go ahead and select both of those. And to do that, I just held down the control key as I was selecting the other directory, and then click on delete. And just open up the plugins directory just to make sure that W3 Total Cache is all gone, and it is. And that's it. We have successfully totally removed all remnants of the W3 Total Cache plugin. And that's going to bring us to the end of this video. Thanks for watching, and you have a great day.